Hi, everyone. I'm Megan Lazovick, Vice President from Edison Research.
And hello, I am Gabriel Soto. I'm a Senior Director at Edison Research. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today.
This report we're sharing with you today was originally presented at PRPD back in August. We owe a huge thank you to PRPD and our friend Abby Goldstein for funding this research and encouraging us to do such an in-depth study on Gen Z.
And while we originally presented this to a public radio audience in the great city of New Orleans, Edison Research and PRPD thought it would be valuable to share this with anyone looking to connect with this younger generation.
Absolutely. If you have joined today, you already have some understanding that Gen Z is different from the generations before them. We'll give our take, and we'd love to hear your take as well. We have the chat window open. Use it responsibly. But also, please feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation in the Q&A box, and we'll break at the end to answer some of them.
Yeah, of course. Please let us know where you're from, what you're interested in. The webinar is being recorded, and the video and the slide deck will be available on edisonresearch.com after this webinar ends. And if you're watching a replay, please email info@edisonresearch.com with any of your questions.
Oh, and one more housekeeping note before we get started. We are giving away one of these fancy Edison Research sweatshirts at the end of this webinar. We may go almost the full hour today, so hang in with us, and maybe you'll be one of our lucky winners of one of these sweatshirts.
Super comfortable. It comes in all different sizes, so let's get started.
Yes. Okay, so as an elder millennial, I try my best to keep up, but I often do find myself relying on my younger colleague here, Gabe, to translate the occasional meme or explain a trend.
But then I think this younger millennial got a little too old. That's right. I'm no longer cool enough to keep up with the latest trends like the tortilla slaps and the corn kids. I'm still stuck on that, and I know that was over the summer.
That's over now, Gabe. If you don't know what Gabe is talking about, that's even more reason to listen up, because that's what we're here to share with you today: the complex media habits of Generation Z, the future of audiences.
So today we'll consider Gen Z, those between the ages of 12 and 24.
And while there are many things to learn about this generation, today we'll focus on answering three main questions. The first is, how do Gen see themselves?
The second, how do they consume media?
And finally, we want to know, how do they share with their peers?
So Gen Z make up 1/5 of the US population older than 12, what we estimate to be more than 58 million people. This cohort is also more ethnically diverse compared with any generation before it. The majority of 12 to 24-year-olds on your left here identify with a non-white ethnic group, and that's not the case with Americans older than 25. To learn more about this group, we tapped into an arsenal of existing Edison research studies. The bulk of the data you'll see today will come from the Infinite Dial. It's a national telephone survey that tracks media behaviors of all Americans. Share of ear, it's a national diary study that measures the time Americans spend with audio every day. And of course, you'll see some data from Edison Podcast Metrics. It's a national online survey that captures the listening of the US weekly podcast audience.
And thanks to PRPD, we were able to conduct in-depth interviews with Gen Zers from across the country. Now, while we hope to characterize this group of people for you, we feel it's best to start with their own words. So we have a video to share. Here are the Gen Zers describing their own generation.
So it's tricky describing my generation because I feel like this is how everybody describes their own generation, particularly at my age. But I'd say that we're a lot more progressive. I'd say we're very knowledgeable in terms of like world events and things that are happening. I think we're a lot more socially active.
We're a lot more flexible in ideas and I don't know. I think that there's a lot more like fluidity with my generation.
My mom says she's open-minded and stuff. She's not really. And I feel like at some point you're just like, okay, I mean, I guess my generation is just much more open to things.
I think where Gen Z is coming from is the fact that they've had to literally live through so many once in a lifetime events where we've kind of gone past like the old nihilistic generations into one where everything, and it's not that everything is funny, but we need to be able to laugh about things because it's gotten to the point where it's kind of overwhelming just to exist.
We've seen, like, I remember Sandy Hook happened when I was 12 or 13. And we've seen that growing up too. I remember being told, like, this is what happened if an active shooter comes in, and like being like ready for that, or like knowing that it would eventually happen. And like being terrified, or even like on my college campus being like, okay, like this is what's happening. Like if you hear a gunshot, like walking down the street, like this, I'm going to go into that building or whatever. And so I think like growing up with that fear, in terms of my generation, we've all kind of understood that things need to change.
I think we like see a lot of things that are like messed up, that like people have done before us. And we like really want to make a difference and to change things. And I don't know, I think we like experience a lot of dread and a lot of grief, and like we don't necessarily have like outlets or guidance in how to move through that and deal with that.
That was a lot right at the start. We're looking at this group of people who are at such an important age. So much of their own worldviews are being formed in their teens and young adulthood. And some real anxiety-inducing, life-changing things have happened to them in their lives so far. One of the young people in that video described their generation as flexible. And it totally makes sense. You have to be flexible when there is so much change happening around you. They're flexible, they're open. They were also open to a homework assignment we gave them ahead of each interview. We asked them to paste images into Google Slides on a few topics. Just the nature of this assignment gives you a hint about this group. Not every person could easily complete this task, but this generation is very familiar with Google Slides, especially familiar with communicating using images. So here's the assignment we gave them. Each participant shared 5 images that they felt represented them as a person. The images you see here are directly from our participants. These are the images they've chosen to represent themselves. Now, they could have chosen anything. They submitted links to websites, their own personal photos, or images they found on the web. We even got a bunch of TikTok videos. Then we took all of these images and we grouped them and looked for themes to help us understand them a little more. So here's what they shared. The first theme we saw was music, art, and culture. This was really important to their identities. We see just pictures of a moon listening to music, an artist on Spotify, cartoons about music, art, and that picture there is Jane Austen, an avid Jane Austen reader. We also had food, links to recipes, and especially for using TikTok. That was a way that that people, learn about recipes, and they thought that, was a big part of their identity.
Now it's lunchtime, 1 o'clock, and seeing pictures of these foods, especially ramen, is making me super hungry.
Well, I'll dig up that link and I'll send it to you, Gabe, so you can make it after.
Appreciate it.
Of course. Next, we saw politics and beliefs. We have, one person was talking about the religion and using a funny meme from Princess Bride. We also had someone chose a picture of someone hugging a tree to represent their passion for the environment. This next one is a funny one, rest. There's a picture of me in the morning on the left there, and then on the right we see someone leaning back, watching TV with their slippers on. I think it's really interesting that people chose images about rest to represent themselves. And this is a theme, if you keep watching throughout, it's going to pop up again and again, where sort of rest and relaxation is important to this generation, potentially just because of their age after a night of partying, but also just because this generation is, it's important to them. They have the boundaries, and they're setting boundaries and making sure they have the time to rest.
Certainly. I think work-life balance is very important for this generation. And by the way, I used to have those same Homer Simpson slippers that I used to take to bed every day.
You don't have them anymore. That's a shame.
It's an artifact somewhere.
All right. Next, we have gender identity. We did have one participant who identified as non-binary, and there's a super cute image from the Arthur cartoons labeled non-binary vibes. We also had feelings. Thought it was interesting. Character traits. This person decided to share sort of images that describe some of their characteristics. So she thought that she was organized, so she chose a bunch of bins to show organization, and that she was thrifty, so she used the thrifty logo. So she doesn't really have an association with rental cars exactly, but thought it was she thought of a brand to demonstrate that she was thrifty, which was clever.
Very creative. Yep.
Yeah, and it leads into, okay, and next is feelings, similar to character traits. When I asked, what represents you, people chose feelings. This generation thought that a feeling was a representation of themselves. So we see a cute heart, someone sort of hugging a heart. There's another heart. I'm not sure what's going on in that one. Maybe some conflicted feelings of the heart. And then an emoji, which is, I don't know, what would you say that is, Gabe? That's
probably half a frown, not fully mad, but just half mad.
Yeah, I think it feels like it's judging me. Maybe that's how they felt about the assignment that I gave them. Next, we have clothing and brands. And that could be anything from the hoodie sweatshirt that just feels like a part of you that you wear all of the time, to the idea of just loving clothes so much that you have too much of them, or aspirational brands that you hope to purchase one day. We also had connections. People talked about family being really important to them and choosing images that reminded them of family, or the idea of being there for someone. I'm here to make you happy. It's a cute little dog image. And then at the top here, we had a participant who lived in a big house with a bunch of roommates, and talked about how important it was to them to sit on the porch and just have that hangout time. Was something that they did with their roommates quite often, and that was a part of their identity. This connection, these groups of friends was important to them. We had aspirations, especially this time of life. We have young people who are, considering careers. So we have pictures of Angela Davis, Stacey Abrams, people who are inspirational to them. And one shared their aspiration to be a lawyer one day. We saw images of meaningful places, the city where they internshiped, the harbor that they walked past every single day on the way to school, vacations, and other hiking places that they go that are meaningful to them in their lives. Next is a fun one, animals. I think this is somewhat related to the idea of rest and self-care, at least in the conversations I had with them. Their animals were really important to them. Some of these pictures are their actual animals, their actual pets, and some of them are just images to represent the fact that animals are important to them. And of course, everyone loves animal TikToks, so we saw some of those.
There's nothing more comforting than animals.
Yes, absolutely. I wouldn't be surprised if one jumps up on my lap at some point in this webinar today. We've got education, again, makes sense for this age group. We talk to people who are about to go to college or in college or just out of college. So we see college mascots, math memes, a cute SpongeBob meme about being a freshman in college and feeling the need to write everything down.
I thought these were funny. Both of these memes.
Very cute. We have sports and fitness. That was important to some of participants. And finally, and almost related to that, video games came up a lot, especially with the young men in our studies. Esports, and I actually wasn't even sure which category to put this one in, because video games is now a sport, especially in some high schools. One of the participants, participated in sports with their school, but it's also a part of their identities. And they're giving me images of avatars. They're talking about designing games. It's a big part of their of some of these people's lives.
I'm all for it. I do believe video games are a form of sport, training your reflexes and your mental ability, definitely.
Especially as we're like, technology is just such a bigger part of our lives.
Exactly.
The idea of, wasting time on video games, it's like, that's outdated completely. So now we'll consider all of these images that we just looked at a good introduction to what's important to this generation. What we saw here, also, there were a bunch of nods to the media in their lives. So I'll hand it over to you, Gabe, to show us data on their actual media consumption behaviors.
Thanks, Meg. And thanks for highlighting video games. I do think Gen Z might just be the first generation to enjoy watching other people play video games more than they actually enjoy playing them themselves. So let's start there. In the Infinite Dial 2022 conducted last January, 1/3 of 12 to 24-year-olds reported currently watching live streamed video games on services such as Twitch, YouTube Live, Facebook Live, or Mixer, compared with 13% of the population older than 25 that said the same. Now, it's not just Mario Kart or Fortnite, Minecraft. Gen Z also like to immerse themselves in audio stories and information. 1/2 of Gen Z in the same survey reported ever listening to an audiobook at one point in their lives, versus 43% of the rest of the population. Now, growing up with these video streaming platforms, Netflix, Hulu, and now Disney Plus, it's no surprise that virtually everyone within the 18 to 24 age bracket currently uses streaming video. Now, we are showing 18 to 24 here from our online general population study of more than 1,000 Americans that was conducted in the spring of 2022. Still, the Gen Z we do have in this survey do surpass the online population, the online 25 plus population in streaming video consumption. This young group of people are consuming digital media at higher rates than the rest of us, and it's an important part of their everyday lives. So let's take a look at what they had to say about it.
So let's say when I wake up, I get on my phone in the morning.
Well, immediately when I wake up, I probably go on Instagram or Snapchat to scroll through, see what's going on over the time I was asleep.
I usually check Snapchat first, just to see if anyone's texted me at all.
Okay, so I wake up. I watch TikTok until I have to get up. And then normally when I'm getting ready, I will listen to a podcast. It's normally a news podcast.
When I eat breakfast, when I am talking to my family, I try to be engaged, and then so I'll flip my phone over. But after everyone's gone, I'll probably go on my phone. I'll probably scroll on TikTok.
Once I'm ready, I usually go to breakfast at the dining hall. So I listen to music on Spotify as I walk there. And then if the line is long, I usually go on Facebook and just kind of scroll.
Sometimes I'll listen to music in the morning. I'll often listen to music or a podcast on my commute to work.
Anytime really I'm in the car, Apple Music is being used. Sometimes I'll use the podcast app and I'll listen to a podcast.
During school, you're not allowed to have a phone. Although lunch, I am on my phone.
Lunch or whatever, and then go and watch YouTube videos of hair tutorials and stuff, makeup tutorials too.
During lunch, I usually watch a little TikTok.
When I wake up from my afternoon nap, that sounds like I'm a toddler, but when I wake up from my afternoon nap, normally that's when I like go back on TikTok, and sometimes that can turn into a few hours of TikTok.
When I get home, I'm probably gonna scroll on TikTok. I might play a video game. The video game is probably gonna be Animal Crossing because it's very relaxing.
At night, we usually, as a family, will watch some TV shows. We use Disney Plus a lot. We love our Disney shows. Marvel's really awesome.
Normally we'll watch like an episode of some form of media before going to bed.
Sometimes I'll watch TV on like the big TV, but a lot of times it's like I like to watch TV on my laptop. Like I'll watch Grey's Anatomy. I'm a big fan of Grey's Anatomy, but only the older seasons.
I usually watch way too much TikTok at night. It kind of sucks you in a little bit. And then I go to sleep.
When I get home at 11, it's like until I pass out with the phone on my chest. I'm like on my phone, Google searching, looking at Facebook, looking at videos or anything I didn't get a chance to look at earlier in the day.
All right, so the smartphone. The smartphone was mentioned about 10 different times in that clip. And, Megan, while I think it has uprooted the way in which we live our lives, or in the way which we lived our lives as millennials, for Gen Z, it has always been a part of, their lives. It always been part of their roots. We know that 93% of 12 to 24-year-olds own a smartphone versus 87% of the 25 plus population. Now, that's not surprising to anyone anymore. Let's remember that it wasn't long ago that the norm for 12 to 24-year-olds was to not have a smartphone. It's what makes Generation Z unique. It's evident in the qualitative videos that we just showed. The smartphone is how they find out about trends. It's how they learn new things. And of course, it's how they consume audio. In our share of ear data from Q2 2022, out of all the time that 13 to 24-year-olds reported spending with audio, the majority of it occurred on a smartphone. That's more than double of what it was among Americans older than 25. So the smartphone has really granted Gen Z this ability to listen to whatever audio they want. These kids do prefer to tap into digital audio sources over radio when they do listen. So take a look at this. This one is from, again, share of year Q2 2022. And we're showing 25 plus population first. We understand that 43% of the time Americans older than 25 spend with audio comes from AM/FM radio content, and that's that blue section. Among Gen Z, the radio share is 15%. They prefer to spend their time listening to streaming audio in orange, the Pandoras and Spotify's, and YouTube for music, and that's in purple. So in this case, digital is much larger among Gen Z. It gives this diverse, open-minded group access to content like music that they can access on, that they cannot access on radio, that they can access on digital audio sources.
Absolutely, quite a difference. Music, of course, is deeply rooted in Gen Z's lives, but don't take that from us. Listen to what they have to say about music in this next clip.
Basically, anytime that I'm in the car, I am listening to music.
It's pretty important. I feel like it sets the mood for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the gym, I would listen to like stuff that would pump me up. From the shower, sometimes be more chill.
Like if I'm stressed or I just want to be alone, music is what helps me out. But like during homework, if I can't focus on my homework, I listen to music to help me out.
My dad calls it having a soundtrack to your life. I always have music going, whether it's in the shower or when I'm, washing the dog. Anything and everything I play music for.
Basically.
So, Megan, other than the smartphone, music is another driving force behind the time Gen Z spend with audio. They just said it themselves. In the second quarter of last year, Americans 13 to 24 spent 3 hours and 43 minutes listening to music every day, as noted by the red section in the top bar. And that's an average of 40 minutes more than the rest of the population. So music is a great way to appeal to this generation, especially if it involves hip hop and R&B. The top music genre Gen Z report listening to most often is hip hop and R&B. They also over-index on top 40 in the second section here, and alternative rock, third from the top.
Now, as we saw earlier, Gen Z prefer digital sources of audio, but what do they think about radio? We asked them that as well. Let's take a look.
I haven't listened to the radio in like, I don't know how long. It feels so old fashioned.
Optionally, no, but if I'm in the car with my parents or something, I'll listen to it.
Well, in the car, sometimes I'm listening to the radio, but that's about it.
I mean, I grew up listening to the radio, but I don't think I've listened to the radio unless I didn't have a choice in a long time.
I have like the Bluetooth in my car and stuff, so I'm usually just using like my phone and the apps on my phone to listen to music.
If I'm like really bored and like my phone's gonna die and like I forgot to charge it or something, I'll put it on. But if not, I'd rather just drive in silence.
Not really, no. I used to a little bit in high school, but we only have like 2 stations, your pop station, your country station. And yeah, good music, but I need some variety.
I don't know, with like Spotify, like I can kind of pick whatever I want to listen to, but if I'm just listening to the radio, then I kind of like, I don't know, like I don't need to decide. And yeah, it feels like something that's like pretty consistent, where like I turn it on and I kind of know what I'm gonna get. And that can be really comforting.
The radio station I listen to has like, they stay off of politics and everything. They have a segment called like Good News or whatever, and they tell like nice happy stories about like, you know, how a puppy saved a little boy, or you know, just like very like light, nice little things, and you're like, okay, that's good. And you just like to hear them go back and forth. I mean, I can listen to Spotify or whatever all the time, you know, while I'm at work and everything. Why not listen to something else while I'm driving?
So those were some of their thoughts on radio. You know, some people said that they listen because their parents listen or because they're in the car. Others said that it's old-fashioned, it needs more variety. I used my phone instead. But you know, the landscape has really changed throughout the years. Today, we know that 37% of 12 to 24-year-olds listen to AM/FM radio content every week versus 60% among the rest of the population. And as an extension of that, we do see usage for AM/FM radio in the car among Gen Z at 40%, up at the top, while the rest of the population is at 77%. Now, this in-car listening is shifting to online audio and podcast. We see Gen Z over-index significantly on usage for both of those digital audio sources. And Megan, you know better than I do that spoken word audio has increased throughout the years, especially among younger audiences. And podcasts have been a big reason for that. Today, about half, or as reported in the last year's Infinite Dial in 2022, about half of 12 to 24-year-olds reported listening to a podcast in the last month, and 1/3 of the rest of the population reported the same.
Yes, we saw younger listening and podcasts jump up. We go into it in detail in the spoken word audio report, which you should check out if you haven't already. But okay, so half of Gen Z are podcast listeners, half are not. It makes sense when we did these in-depth interviews that about half of them had something good to say about podcasts.
And about half of them had something to say about the medium. Let's take a look.
I like to have conversations in person. Like I like the face-to-face like contact. So I think like podcasts for me, it just kind of like gets boring and I kind of get off in my own thoughts and like not really pay attention, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I've heard of them, but they just, I don't know. I like when people do stuff, you know, not just like talk about their life.
I'm like, this is so boring. Some of my track friends will watch it. I'm like, this is boring. But I kind of just started getting into it like the past like year and a half, 2 years maybe.
I like used to like listen to podcasts to help me sleep. I would like listen to there's this one podcast called Snap Judgment that like was like a storytelling podcast, and I would like need to listen to an episode for me to be able to sleep.
I love a story, especially a story about someone's like real life, something that I can relate to. There's this one podcast program that I listen to called This American Life, and they choose random things just in current America. It could be politically related, could be socioeconomically, anything like that, and they just talk about how someone deals with the challenges they're going through. And I think that's super cool that others are able to deal with their certain challenges. And, you know, I have my own that I'm going through, and we can all make it through together.
All right. So it is great to hear their thoughts, you know, generation that is leading the way in podcast listening, and great to hear why some of them don't listen. But of those who do listen to podcasts, here's an insight on how to reach them. This is from our Edison Podcast Metrics Q2 survey data of US weekly podcast listeners. And while we understand that recommendations from friends and family is the most popular way for podcast listeners older than 25 to discover podcasts, we also understand that among 18 to 24-year-olds, the most popular form of discovery is by searching YouTube. And, you know, Megan, I always found it interesting that the power that your podcast have, the power that to promote your podcast on social media is somewhat outperformed by the power to promote it on one single platform, right at the top, which is YouTube.
Yeah, I feel like that was the story of all last year. We heard all about YouTube. But of course, social media still is very important, and virtually all personalities in the podcasting space have a strong presence on social media platforms like TikTok and Instagram, or at least they should. So let's take a look at how social media plays a role in Gen Z's lives.
Social media is like really great about like, I don't know, kind of figuring out what's going on and like connecting with old friends. But I think it also is something that I find really overwhelming. And sometimes I like can't control my consumption of it.
Like I see people who are like, no, I'm not gonna get TikTok, and then they get TikTok and they're like absorbed in it. Like they can't, like I feel like there's no way out once you're in.
Yes, I spend way too many hours on TikTok.
I think a lot of my generation kind of uses things like TikTok as like a coping mechanism, like almost like a 20-something pacifier, because life gets a little scary and it's just easier to turn on your phone.
I think it consumes a lot of, I mean, even just with this interview, I see, I'm like, dang, I'm always on my phone.
I have like mood swings with it. Some days are better than others. Some days I go on there and I'm like super excited to see what people are doing and be like, oh my God, I'm so happy for you. And then other days it can be like almost a Debbie Downer in a way. It can make me feel like really insecure sometimes.
I grew up with Instagram and Twitter. And I know that if I like start my day with Instagram and Twitter, it's like, it's bound to not be a very good day, because it's normally like a comparison game. It's like, you know, on Instagram, it's like, oh my God, my friend Susie, she's in Italy, I'm so jealous, you know? So it's better to do that like later in the day.
It can definitely be too much. It can definitely, you need a balance of like the time that you're off of social media.
So these you know, the interviews show that these kids do have an awareness of the negative and the positive impacts of social media. But whether it's, you know, an addiction or to stay connected, 93% of Generation Z currently use at least one social media platform. The top 3 to be on to connect with this audience are Instagram, TikTok, and Snapchat. So Gen Z, they over-index on all of these when compared against the 25 plus population. And TikTok presents a unique opportunity, in my opinion, considering it's grown tremendously in the last 2 years. So fertile ground compared to others. And there's also Facebook. So 43% ever used the platform under indexing compared to the 25 plus population. So another way to look at this is by looking at which they reported listening or using most often. Instagram's the winner here, with a quarter of Gen Z saying they use the brand the most, followed by a close three-way tie between Facebook, TikTok, and Snapchat.
By now, every brand knows that social media is an essential part of strategy. So if you do have a presence on social, what do you post that will be seen by and amplified by this younger generation? Social media is all about sharing. We thought it would be good to understand what Gen Z chooses to share with each other. What are the types of things that speak to them so much that they're compelled to share it with one another? What feelings are drivers behind the sharing? So we gave our panel of Gen Zers another assignment. We asked them to give us 5 examples of things they would share with their friends. Again, this could be anything. Images that they have themselves, links, TikToks, whatever. And then we once again grouped these responses and looked for themes. So let's take a look at these themes that we found. First is pretty obvious, personal photos or experiences. Someone went to Chicago, they sent a photo, or went for a walk, even text messages. That's just a way that people are sharing. Next is memes to express emotions. We saw a lot of memes throughout this, this study. And I could have just said memes, but instead we labeled this memes to express emotions because that's what they were doing with memes. That's when like they were communicating with memes, using it sort of as a language. So instead of saying I'm feeling down, you're sharing an image that conveys that you're feeling down. So you're really learning a lot from an image. Although I did have to ask Gabe what the SpongeBob one meant. I wasn't sure what that was.
And that's just a way to mock people. So, if you get a text message saying memes to express emotions, you can mock them back with the SpongeBob meme here and say memes to express emotions,
I'll send that one to you later. What else did we get? People are sharing music. We talked about how important music is to this generation. They love their Spotify playlists or any playlists. They share YouTube links. Shopping came up again in this section. Before we talked about shopping as a part of their identity. Can flip to the next one, Gabe. Do we have shopping?
A little delayed here.
There we go. I panicked for a minute. I thought you were frozen. We got they have sending links to things that they want to buy to their friends, or they have Amazon wish lists. So we saw a bunch of that from some of our participants. We also got recipes again. That came up as something that they share. Again, TikTok recipes. Before we talked about video games and how video games were sort of important to people's identity. Here, it's another way to communicate with people, just as memes is a way to express your emotions. People are, using video game references in conversations. It's part of their language. They're sending things about sports, news about sports or interesting things that happened. And then social media trends. Now, this was really interesting. I spent 2 weeks talking to people, and I would click on every image they sent me and watch the video with them. So for about 2 weeks, I was like watching TikTok for my job, which was new. And I was learning all types of things. I think, Gabe, we have to click on this TikTok video.
Let's do it.
Gabe mentioned tortilla slaps in our intro earlier today, and this is what it is. They're holding in water.
Okay, rock, paper, scissors.
That looked like it hurt. So anyway,
he was on concussion protocol after that one.
They're sharing they're sharing funny trends that are on social media, but they're also just, you know, recommending different accounts. Hey, I watched this person. I really like them. I think you'd enjoy them too. Of course, we heard in some of these videos how interested in the world they are, how important, you know, different issues are. So they're sharing their thoughts, political beliefs. And then sort of to balance all of that out, they're also sharing humor. And this might be my favorite page here coming up. I mean, Drake maybe could have been its own slide. That we got a lot of Drake imagery for some reason, but we're getting a lot of humor. It's just, you know, something that you want to share with your friends. My favorite image is how to find Kentucky on a map, because it's funny and useful. And now I know. And then finally, the last theme of what Gen Z is sharing with each other. Animals, again, it comes up again. You know, and I think it plays back to it, you know, it makes you feel good. It makes other people feel good too, in terms of having a connection. So Gabe, let's say you were having a bad day. I'm going to send you that duck video. Let's hit play on that duck video. It'll make you feel better, I promise.
We want our viewers to feel better too.
And when I watched this video, I thought with this participant, I thought I have the greatest job in the world. Duck videos. Yes. But anyway, these videos that we saw, these items that we saw, they're a great starting point for you. If you are a content creator, I'm sure you already have content that fits into any one of these categories that we've identified that Gen Z likes to share with each other. But how do you know if what you are sharing will resonate with them, or if you're sharing things that will hurt you in the eyes of Gen Z? For that, I thought to finish up here, I'd embarrass myself a little bit more with one last activity, inspired by my 10-year-old daughter, who often tells me that things are cringe, or that I myself am cringe. And I know there's not much I can do to be cooler in the eyes of my daughter. But I was interested in understanding the quality that makes something cringe. How does one avoid being cringe? So we decided to ask the experts. Please join us in watching this last video. All right, so I want to play a game that I'm calling Cool or Cringe. I'm going to list something. You tell me if that item is cool or cringe.
Okay.
The first thing is Stranger Things.
Cool.
Marvel.
Cool.
Selfies.
Cool.
Elon Musk.
Cool.
Thrift shops.
Oh, that's cool.
80s music.
Cool.
Your parents. Facebook.
Cringe.
Memes.
Cool.
Podcasts.
Cringe.
Radio.
Cool.
Radio.
Cool, yeah.
Radio super cool.
Radio.
Pretty cringe.
Cringe.
Cool.
Millennials.
Millennials are cringe, yeah.
That's
It hurts, Gabe.
heartbreaking.
It hurts.
It's heartbreaking.
Now we compiled all the responses from these interviews and came up with a cool or cringe score. Keep in mind, this is just based off of 12 interviews that we conducted, so it's not considered gospel, but this activity does point us in the right direction. Here are all the things that we asked about. The items at the top of the list were the coolest, with no or few cringe responses. Stranger Things and tattoos are firmly in the cool category. Now, then there are those things in the middle that were neutral, either having as many cool as cringe responses, such as influencers and school from home. Then the items at the bottom of the list were the most cringeworthy, including NFTs and TikTok dances. Now, we could do this exercise in 3 months, and perhaps all of these items would change. Trends, after all, do come and go. But here's the big takeaway on the slide. Most of the things here are cool. The general feedback was, it might not be my thing, but if it's yours and it makes you happy, then cool. Someone pointed out, as long as it's not hurting anyone, then cool. This speaks to how open-minded this generation is. They're not quick to label things. They're not quick to dismiss something unless they sense that it's harmful or fake. And perhaps because they are so open-minded, they don't respond well to someone who is not being their authentic self. If they sense you are being something or someone you are not, you're more likely to fall into that cringe category. The millennial thing though, Gabe, I can't explain it. I think we're great. But Gen Z thinks we're
I
cringe.
have to agree. So we did start this webinar with the goal to answer these 3 questions. How do Gen Z see themselves? How do they consume media? And what do they share with their peers?
And what did we learn, Gabe? Well, first we learned that they are diverse and open-minded. This ethnically diverse group understands there will be people with different tastes, cultures, and norms, which has naturally led them to be more accepting and open-minded.
Of course, and we know that they consume digital media, unless influenced by their older generations, like mom, dad, grandparents, or the environment, having a car without access to Bluetooth or aux cable.
Mm-hmm. And finally, we learned that they have a lot on their minds. They are constantly inundated with messaging on social media. And these past 3 years with COVID and culture wars has been a lot for people of all generations. But now imagine this happening to a person who is still trying to figure out who they are and what they like and what they don't like, what makes them happy, what makes them unhappy. Gen Z is still forming that worldview in a time where the world is so rapidly changing.
So what can you do for Gen Z?
Well, if you are producing any type of content for Gen Z, you can provide context around the important issues and events in their lives. Make sure the content that can help Gen Z understand the world is available to them in their own world. Are your stories also Instagram stories? If you produce audio content, are you also on TikTok? Is your content accessible on smart speakers and other emerging digital devices or platforms? Is it accessible in a way that makes it easy for them to share with each other?
Second, you can find the right meme that expresses the feeling that you wish to communicate. Sure, their memes can be funny, but as Megan said, they're also used to express emotion. It is a totally different language and, dare we say, a skill. Are you speaking their language?
Absolutely. It's such a learned skill. I'm still learning. And I, lean on other people to help me with that. So you need to have someone on your team. If you don't understand it, you need someone on your team who understands it. Okay, next is be one of the places they can go to relax. The fact that some people in our study used sleep or rest as a way to describe themselves speaks volumes. And there's something to tap into here. Can your content help them recharge or rest? And if it does, are you presenting it to them in that way?
Another way to connect with Gen Z and what you can do for Gen Z is to consider music as a gateway. If you specialize in non-music content, consider incorporating ways to talk about music. If you double down on music initiatives, then you might just be able to appeal to these open-minded and diverse listeners that spend about 40 minutes more than older generations listening to music every day.
And finally, what's the last one, Gabe?
And the last one is to try not to be cringe, be authentic. I realize that's easier said than done, but the good news is that most Gen Zers say as long as you're not hurting someone, then you're pretty cool.
And there's one additional layer here to trying not to be cringe. It's being authentically you. You can't be a boomer pretending to be a Gen Z, but you can have an authentic interest in what Gen Zers find appealing. And you can recruit and partner with Gen Z voices to have authentic and appealing content.
So Megan and I hope that you can put some of these takeaways to good use. We'd love to hear your thoughts on how you successfully connected with Gen Z in the past or how you plan to do it in the future. So please reach out to us. Let us know at info@edisonresearch.com. info@edisonresearch.com.